Welcome to Sex is Medicine, your number one resource for holistic sex education. I'm Devi Ward Erickson, and I invite you to join me every week for another enriching and powerful conversation about the intersection of sexuality, spirituality, pleasure, and personal growth. Each episode of Sex is Medicine is dedicated to awakening your heart and mind to the true purpose and power of human sexuality. Please join me on this journey of self-discovery as we explore the art of using pleasure as medicine to awaken, heal, and empower every area of your life. Sex is Medicine broadcasts every Thursday at 7 p.m. Pacific on Contact Talk Radio Network. You can listen to the replay and subscribe to Sex is Medicine on Spotify, Stitcher, TuneIn, iTunes, iHeartRadio, and YouTube. And now get ready for another episode of Sex is Medicine. Hey everybody, welcome to Sex is Medicine. I am your host, Devi Ward Erickson, coming at you once again on this beautiful Thursday evening to enrich your heart and mind with more information, education about sexuality, spirituality, pleasure, and personal growth. This evening, we have another wonderful guest to share with you, the beautiful Brittany Policastro. We were just talking about this. I'll get it out. Who is not only a graduate of our institute, but she's also a sex, love, and relationship coach of her own accord, has been doing this work for 13 years and quite an accomplished yogini in her own right. Brittany is also a polyamorous and is here to share her wisdom, guidance, and insight on how to navigate relationships in a way that is healthy, enriching, and constructive. So thank you for joining us, Brittany. It's an honor to have you.
I'm so excited to be here, Devi.
Yay.
Thank you.
Yeah. So what is your story? So why, that's the question that comes up, I think, for a lot of people in terms of like relationships and, and so we're so conditioned to like be, boy, girl and polyamorous or monogamous, and so it takes a lot of courage, I think, and self-awareness to recognize and engage in polyamory as a relationship style. So how did you get into this? What is your story?
Sure. So I've been polyamorous for 5 years now. And I've been with I call him my anchor partner, my nesting partner, which means we live together and we share all the things together. I say that more than primary because it's just a little less hierarchical and it honors everyone we engage with. And so we've been together for about 10 years. And well, it's been 10 years actually. And we started monogamous. And I had always been monogamous from the first person I had a crush on when I was, 5 years old. It was like, I want that boy. And so I started to consider polyamory when someone really close to my partner and I let us know that she was ethically non-monogamous and somebody that we respect deeply as a human, as a mother, as a wife, like all the things. And so when I heard this, I became curious as opposed to judgmental because I just had so much respect for this person. And the funny thing is that probably really close to like 10 years before that, in like 2009, I had dated somebody who was ethically non-monogamous. I kind of found out like a little bit into it and I had such a hard time with it. Like I judged him. It was really the first time I really had even heard much about it beyond like swinging, which is a little bit different. And I remember it's a lot different. Yeah.
I've done both.
Yeah.
I've been poly and I've swung, and it's they're very different pieces. There can be lots of overlap.
Absolutely, yeah, and it's like I see it in the umbrella of ethical non-monogamy, but it's definitely not polyamorous. There's a lot of ethical non-monogamous people that aren't necessarily polyamorous, right? And so, so this person, I sent them to like my shamanic healer at the time to like fix them. It was hilarious, like how much I did to try to get this person to be monogamous. And then here we go, like, years later, I'm considering it. And so I became more curious about it. And curiosity is really in my opinion, the antidote to judgment, right? Because when we're like, oh, this is different than what I'm used to, but that doesn't mean it's wrong or it's bad. It's just different. So let me get curious about the differences and maybe if these differences could work for me. And so that is what happened, which is just, even thinking about that and feeling that in my body, it's so much more space, and we may have decided it wasn't for us, but we didn't discount it because of the curiosity.
Yeah.
And
yeah, I love that. That's because that is such a healthy perspective as opposed to just closing down, being open to the possibility. And that doesn't mean that once you explore it, you have to decide that you want to move towards it, but just being open to considering like, hey, this is a different relationship strategy. What's this about?
Yeah, exactly. Like I call it, when I talk about it, I call it a relationship model.
Yeah.
Like that's what it is to me. It's not necessarily like my life or my way of being. It's simply, and for some it is, and that's fine. But for me, it's just the way I'm choosing to be in relationship right now. That's what I'm choosing. And for me, that simplifies it. It doesn't put all this identity stuff on it. Because when we get into that identity stuff, it's really easy to lose ourselves in this identity of who we are. I'm this polyamorous, kinky, sexually liberated person. Woo, look at me. As opposed to like, I'm just a person who's making choices.
Yes. I love that. Yes. I'm just doing, and that choice may change tomorrow.
Exactly. Right. And that's another thing about like when we let go of those identities a little bit, it's like there's more space for us to change. Yeah. As opposed to being like, oh, but I said I was this thing, and if I change it, then everybody's going to think whatever. And so, we had this space and we just talked about it for a while, and we talked about it and we considered it. And the thing about me was that I had a lot of trauma around, I was in a very emotionally abusive relationship in my early 20s, and he was very controlling and very manipulative. And so, I would get quote unquote in trouble if, not even if I was like attracted to someone else, but if someone else was attracted to me. Wow. I would get a backlash from him and his insecurities. And so I was very nervous and scared in relationships to even find someone else attractive. Like I was that far in the other, other pendulum swing as to where I am now, is that I felt like there wasn't even space for that. And, my partner that I'm still with, when, we were together for the first 5 years, I started to just kind of test the waters, so to speak, expressing being attracted to someone else. These different things would start to come up, and he would just be like, sure, okay. Like that's okay. That kept happening for me, to the point where I had seen someone, I met someone, I was teaching a yoga class and he was taking another yoga class, and we wound up talking, and there was this spark. And this was like maybe like 8 months before we opened our relationship. And I remember being like, whoa, like there's something here with this person. And I went home and I felt so incredibly guilty. And like I sat my partner down, I was like, I have to tell you something. And he's like, okay, what's going on? And I said, I met this person and I had a spark and I felt chemistry. And he was like, okay, like, thank you for telling me. I'm not worried about that. Like, and I was like, well, what if I see him again? And he was like, well, then you see him again. And I said, well, what if I want more? And he said, well, then we'll talk about it. And the freedom the space and freedom that he gave me by not freaking out, by not judging me, by not being worried about it literally at all, like not at all. It gave me the space and the freedom just to feel that attraction. And then it shifted. Like I never saw that dude again. And that night I remember this release and this relief of like, oh, I'm able to feel attraction to other people, and that's safe, and my partner is not going to judge me or emotionally harm me or abuse me for feeling this way. And that for me kept kind of happening. I kept
Mm.
playing with that and really titrating that because there was trauma around it for me.
Ah, yeah. And I love the way you describe that. That's so beautiful. And I often talk about that with my, my husband as well. It's like
Yeah.
attraction is normal and healthy. Like it's like being upset with yourself because you want to eat sushi, or like, I
Yeah.
mean, it's just like it's really beyond our control. And then when we like
Yeah.
attach all this meaning to it and try to shut it down, then it festers and grows. Just like anything, you try to suppress it, it explodes. So I love that description that you just shared. And then also like how beautiful that your partner is just so secure in himself that he's just like, awesome.
Yeah.
Why are you telling me this? That's great.
Yeah. Like didn't miss a beat. And he's very secure, and which is amazing. And I've learned a lot from him with that, secure attachment that he has. And, just watching him navigate his other relationships, it's quite breathtaking to behold a secure person navigating relationships.
Yeah.
Because I'm not necessarily I'm what a friend who's a therapist calls earned secure, like an earned secure attachment.
Mm-hmm.
But normally I can get pretty anxious in relationships. And
Mm-hmm.
polyamory has been challenging for that reason,
Mm-hmm.
because there's then lots of other people that can trigger our shit.
Well, yeah, I was going to say that in terms of like attachment, wounds and attachment styles. Like polyamory's got to be a shit show for people that are not cognizant of their different attachment styles and their wounds. All of that is gonna manifest because that's
Absolutely.
comes up in a relationship, and the more relationships you have, the more opportunity it is for that to arise. So, how have you been able to heal through relationship, both the relationship with your anchor partner as you describe, and I love that description, and then being polyamorous, how has that supported or affected your healing?
Yeah, so it's come in stages. When we finally did open our relationship, yeah, shit show is the perfect word because that's exactly what it was for me, not for him, for me, right? For me, I'm gonna totally own that, right? I mean, he had his own stuff, right? But I was the one that really kind of dove in first.
Mm-hmm.
And the interesting thing about that is that I when I, my anchor partner, our 10-year relationship, he's secure. And so because of that, a lot of stuff that I didn't experience with him because he's secure was kind of put under the carpet, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know it was there because it wasn't there with him.
Yeah.
Right. When we talk about, attachment styles, anxious attachment tends to attract avoidant attachment, right? And so all of a sudden I started attracting avoidant attachment after avoidant. Now, there's nothing wrong with avoidant attachment. They oftentimes get a bad rap. There's nothing wrong with that. But when mixed with someone who has kind of the opposite, it can be really intense. The sex oftentimes is amazing, very tumultuous, and all of my stuff that it wasn't necessarily repressed, it was just quieted, started to come up. And at that point, I had no idea of attachment styles. They were just kind of coming up. This is language and understanding that is really still pretty new.
Yeah, very new.
And for me, the reason I talk about it is because it's been so helpful in understanding myself. So at first, I didn't show up in a way that was, I'm not going to say I'm not proud of, because I showed up as a human being. Well, I was a human being in a really messy and intense situation. But I'm definitely showing up differently now, right? And so back then, at first, our relationship, for what felt like the first time in 5 years, was tested. So our relationship was pretty chill. Yeah, we had our things, and every now and then we'd have arguments and stuff, of course, that's healthy. But there was nothing super, super intense. And then I met someone, and I had the first experience of actually loving someone and having a deep infatuation with someone. And there was a lot of amazing components of this relationship. And there was a lot of unhealthy components of this relationship. There was a lot of codependency. There was a lot of that anxious avoidant dance that was happening. I was triggered most of the relationship because I just was trying to get safety from this human who it wasn't his responsibility to give me that. And because I didn't understand that as someone who has that attachment style, that it's hard for me to self-regulate, which really just means, take care of myself, self-soothe. And so I, in the past, have tried to get other partners to do that, and that can sometimes for certain people feel suffocating.
Yeah.
Right. Never did for Nick, for my anchor partner. It was fine for him, but for others it did. And so that's when my anchor relationship started to get tested. And that's when we started going to therapy together.
Yeah.
Right. And really start to notice and look into some of the foundational pieces of our relationship that weren't as steady as we thought. Right. There were some cracks, and, there was some boundary stuff. There was him trying to please me and, not honoring his needs all of the time, and me capitalizing on that. And so we started to see that, and we started to do our work. Yeah. And so that was the first piece, is that we got an amazing therapist who was also polyamorous and sex positive and kink positive. And we started diving into the stuff. And I will say confidently that there's a good chance that we wouldn't be together now if it wasn't for that, if it wasn't for that deep dive that we did. And so we did that for a while, and I was still in this other relationship. And then at the same time, we were engaged to be married. And it wasn't, we had a beautiful ceremony and a ritual. We didn't get legally married because that wasn't an alignment with us. And 4 days after that, that other partner broke up with me. And it was the most pain and grief that I've actually ever felt, because I was so traumatized by it. Yeah. It was abandonment. Yeah. And 4 days after, this union, this deep union, which, don't get it twisted, that union, which was what kind of set everything else into action of this other relationship ending. And so it was really painful. And that's when my own personal healing started on a deeper level, because I started to understand and look back at that other relationship. There wasn't a ton of healing in that relationship. There was healing after.
From that relationship.
Yes.
As a result of that, it's like Phoenix rising from the ash. As a result of that destruction, you're able to rebirth.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. And I think sometimes there's some relationships that we're in that need to end so that we can do the healing and really come home to ourselves. And then there's some relationships that we can be in and understand what's going on with ourselves, and the other take ownership for it, for our own stuff, and then the healing can happen within relationship. Right? But if we're not safe, if we don't feel safe in the relationship, then healing is going to be harder to come by. We can't really heal if we're not feeling safe.
No, because when you're not safe, that wound keeps, being stressed. Right. And something that you said I want to really pull out there is that you got support. So in my mind, it is the most ridiculous assumption in the world for any of us to presume, with all the fucking shit we have to endure in our life, that we're able to just navigate life without any support. And particularly relationship without any support. Like, whoever taught us to be in relationship in a healthy way? Fucking nobody. So we have to learn how to do this ourselves, and putting that burden of responsibility on our own shoulders, like we're supposed to figure out how to do relationship perfectly with no external support, is so unreasonable. It's an unreasonable request, or an unreasonable demand, I say. So I love the fact that you really, you presence that in order to really do this deep healing, that you had support from the unbiased, non-judgmental, attuned support from an external source. That's beautiful.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think, those couple of adjectives that you just used to describe the support is really important, right? Because that can be the difference. That can make or break, right? If you're getting a support system, a therapist, a coach who doesn't understand your relationship dynamic, doesn't understand polyamory, isn't sex positive, isn't kink positive, like whatever it is that you're working through or working with, then how are they going to support you? Right? A lot of times they're going to try to steer you into something that they think is best. And that's just not the way. Like whoever you're working with needs to meet you where you are and needs to respect your choices and hold space for that in whatever way, right? And offer support and offer guidance. But when we're in relationship with someone who's supporting us and they're trying to change the way that we're doing things, that's a red flag, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah, and what occurred to me as you were saying that is like that boyfriend you had years ago where you're trying to fix something, like you need to go, let's de-polyamory, polyamorize you. We'll send you to one of those camps, right?
You know what's so funny about this is that after I opened our relationship, we opened it up, I reached out to him and I had a drink with him and I said, I shamed the shit out of you. And I just want to acknowledge that. And he goes, no, you didn't. And I go, yes, I did. And he goes, well, I didn't receive it. He's like, that wasn't my experience because I didn't feel shame because I was secure in what I was doing, which I thought was like so amazing. Like he just was like, yeah, I mean, maybe you thought you were doing that, but I was like, this is who I am. This is what I'm doing. These are my choices. So I thought that was really cool. It kind of came full circle.
Yeah, that's beautiful. It's beautiful to know that when in our own pain, we're not necessarily inflicting that on others, or we thought we were because we were trying to, and they're like, no, I don't receive your pain.
Yeah. And it's also a reminder that that how others perceive us is others. It's not ours, right? I think that a lot of times when we get pressed back on something about how we want to live our lives, and I truly believe this, that if we're getting a lot of press back about a choice that we're making about how we live our lives, that there's something inside of us that's not completely resolved with it, right? I think there's a piece that is, whether it's not like I don't have kids, I have chosen that, I've chosen polyamory, I'm bisexual, and this is just what I do, and these are my choices, and I don't get a lot of pushback because I'm just like, I mean, it's probably my style. I'm a Philly lady, and we don't take any shit. But there could be a lot of pushback, but I'm pretty clear in those things. The things that I'm not clear on is where sometimes things infiltrate, because that's my own work. That doesn't have to do with anyone else, right?
Yeah, I love that, and that's what you're describing is mirror-like wisdom. Yeah. Exactly, right? That ability to, like, when people are, when the outside is reflecting this, if there's nothing for it to stick to, then it just glides off like glass, right? But if there's something for it to stick to, that's a little red flag letting us know, oh, I've got pain here, I've got wound here. Yes. This is my repair work to do.
Yes, as opposed to just projecting it onto the other person. Right?
Yeah.
Oh, this person is this person doesn't understand me, this person, and maybe they don't, and that's that's our choice in whether or not we want to continue to engage with a person like that, right? We choose. We have our boundaries of who we let into our lives, and who we allow to be our support systems. That's completely our choice, right? And thank you to those people who let me see either the disconnected pieces of myself or the places where I still might be feeling shame, or might not be 100%, and that's okay. Like we don't have to be 100% in every single thing. Again, we're human, right? So there's moments where we might feel unsure about a choice, and that's okay.
So a couple things come up a lot in terms of the conversation around polyamory, and I too have done the polyamorous dance throughout my life. I view it as a strategy to meet needs. That's really, so depending on the needs of the relationship, a strategy may look like monogamy, it may look like polyamory, it may look like swimming or swinging or swimming.
Yeah.
It could look like a lot of things, but the core of it is what needs do we want to meet as individuals, and what needs do we want to meet as a couple. Yes. In my experience, though, that is not necessarily the way things play out. And so in terms of the realm of polyamory, and I'm hoping and I'm guessing that this is changing because there's more conversation around it, but there's a lot of unethical behavior. There's a lot of, unprocessed shadows, unprocessed wounds, that sort of thing. How do you navigate this field with such authenticity and integrity? And then how do you support other people in doing that? Because that's really the thing. It's not about whether we're doing polyamory or monogamy. It's really how do we move in relationships in a way that's authentic and in integrity with ourselves and our values and our agreements and commitments within that relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you said like, it doesn't really have to do with the relationship model or style that you're choosing, right? Now is polyamory, can there be more, there's more to grapple with because you're putting yourself out there in a way that, number one, isn't as supported in our culture, right? So there's like judgment around it. And so when something's not as supported, there's oftentimes not as much education around it. And there's a lot of conditioning around monogamy, right? And so when we're talking about that, the first thing that needs to be understood is that if you want to stray from monogamy in any way, if you want to do something else, choose another model, that there has to be a buffer of a period of time where you deconstruct and literally like sloth off. I think of it like if you go to the spa and have like a spa session where all that dead skin comes off, or you start to release all of the conditioning around monogamy. Now, here's the cool thing about that is that you can do that in a monogamous relationship too.
Yes.
Right. Like a lot of the couples I work with are monogamous still. Like some of them are monogamous looking to move into polyamory, right? But either way, you can choose what pieces of monogamy that you want and what pieces you don't. Because there's a lot of unhealthy narratives around monogamy, around freedom, around being attracted to other people, around having friends that are the opposite sex, if you're monogamous, around cheating, what constitutes cheating, how horrible it is, and all of these things. And so it's the same thing, whether you're polyamorous or whether you're monogamous or somewhere in between. You get to choose what you want to do and how you want to show up. And the thing about polyamory or just ethical non-monogamy in general is that you're almost not forced to, but like it's a lot more at the forefront of your mind because you're like, okay, we're entering uncharted territory, right? And so with anything that we do that, we have to be more discerning and we have to have more awareness. It's like if I'm walking a path maybe that I've never walked before, like in the woods, and I know that there could be some icy spots, but like I've never really walked it before, so it's not familiar, I'm going to be much more careful. Vigilant. Yeah. And I might have like a little bit of a strategy on how to go through that. Yeah. Right. Whereas like a path that I've walked like over and over and over again, like my woods where like this tattoo I have, which you can't see on the podcast, but it's this tree, right? So I go there all the time and I love it. That place, like I can walk and do my thing and there's a loop and I know where I am. Like, I'm not gonna get lost, right? So it's kind of like that, where with polyamory, you could get lost a little bit. So you have to have more communication. You have to really be clear with your boundaries. What is okay? What is not okay? That's really my definition of a boundary. What is okay and not okay for me, right? As opposed to a rule, which is more about how someone else does something. Right. And so all of those things we put into place in ethical non-monogamy, and all of those things, in my opinion, not to should anyone, but like really should be in place in monogamy too. It's just that monogamy becomes a default setting when we meet someone. And so we don't really sit down and have those conversations of like, okay, what are your boundaries? What constitutes cheating? What, how do you feel about being attracted to other people? How do you feel about us not going to bed together every night? If we're living together, do you want to live together? Maybe you don't want to live together. Do you ever want to get married? Maybe you don't want to get married, right? Instead of assuming,
Yeah.
right, the relationship escalator, which is we meet and then we progress and then maybe we move in together or we do something and then we get married and then we have kids, right? So what would happen if we stopped and we started to have these conversations as opposed to this, especially in heteronormative relationships, where it's oftentimes the female partner, the woman wants these things and the male doesn't want these things, and we play with these very stereotypical tropes which aren't necessarily even true, right? It's like, and we just fall into this category because we think we're supposed to.
Yeah, wow. What's coming to me is, again, the construct that society has created for us, and how, again, like you said, the default setting, and how we just play along with it without even questioning, wait a minute, is this what I want? Is this what I want? Or is this what I think I should be doing, or what I'm supposed to do, or what everyone else is doing, but I actually really want something else? So how much of our behavior in like every area of our life, but particularly for this conversation in relationships, is dictated and defined by somebody else's idea of what is proper and acceptable and good?
Yeah, 100%. 100%. I think so much of it is. And I think that's why we struggle so much. I had someone who follows me on Instagram that lives in my area and told me that because of all the stuff that I speak of around just living authentically and, pushing against all these social norms, that she was planning on getting married and decided not to. And I was like, wow, that's amazing. And of course, I put it back on her and was like, that was your decision. But like, what an honor that, that something that I said and offered could just be a little bit of a spark of considering, I don't have to do this. I don't have to be this way. I don't have to do the dance that I'm expected to do.
Exactly. And the thing that comes up, my giant beast is barking. My 120-pound baby child. But what's coming to mind as you were saying that, let me see if I can recapture this thought, is, what you're describing is exactly why monogamy doesn't work for so many people. Like why there's so much divorce, all of that, and dissatisfaction is, again, if we're just going through the motions of what we think should be happening, and we're not in alignment, heart, body, mind, soul, then shit's just not going to work because it's out of alignment.
Absolutely. And so that's the thing, if like you're listening to this and it's like, well, I don't think I could do polyamory. I don't think I could do this. Cool. Like, don't do it. Like, you don't have to, but if anything, let this inspire you to consider what you do want to do.
Yeah.
And if it is monogamy, how you want to do it.
Exactly.
Because there's so many options of what it needs to look like, right? There's so many options of just how you can move through your relationships and through the world with someone. You don't have to live together. You can have your own places forever. You can get married, but it could not be legally. You can have children, but never get married. Like, there's just so many things you can do, right? There's so much. And so and maybe, polyamory is on the table, or ethical non-monogamy, or as Dan Savage coined the term, monogamish. You decide your own little terms. But I think the more that we listen to other ways of being, which is why it's really my if I have a purpose, which I do, it's this. It's to use my own life as an example. In my own integrity, as an example, to inspire people to live how they want to live. Yeah. And I just so happen to live in many ways that is not the common way to live. I've chosen a lot of things that, and not just to be not just to be that person that does that. I mean, it's
Mhm.
I was on that trajectory of wanting the things that I thought I was supposed to want for a very long time, including children. I wanted children until a couple years ago, when I actually realized that I didn't want children, because I don't want to have to provide that much care to another human.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
And
To
thank
me, that's responsible.
Exactly. Like, thank fucking God, right? As opposed to like traumatizing another human being because you were not able to meet their needs for connection and attachment regularly. Like,
Exactly. Exactly. Or like striving to do that and losing myself in the process and
yeah.
denying myself. And so, there's just a lot of things that I grieved that. I grieved that decision.
Mhm.
I mean, I think that my partner and I would be amazing parents in many ways. Our consciousness and the way we relate to each other. We love kids. We love them. And we made this choice not to do that.
Mhm.
And we both are crystal clear. And for me, as a woman, as someone who is very connected to my body biologically, I had a partner more recently who we had a very deep sexual connection. And I felt, even with them, this like urge to
Mhm.
mate with
Yeah.
them, to procreate.
I was going to say that. Well, it's like a cellular need. Like, oh, I must replicate.
It was really an interesting thing, because that was the first time, other than like my partner, which with my anchor partner, it was like, okay, well, yeah, there was a little bit of that like conditioning. That's what we do. But for someone where like that was definitely not happening. I mean, it was not happening. He had a vasectomy, and so it was not happening. And I didn't want it to happen and at all. But my body was like, whoa, what's here? And so that's something to consider, just like as we move through the world, the ways that just inherently and biologically our bodies might want something, but we still get to choose,
Yeah.
right? We still
Yeah.
have sovereignty and agency in the
Mhm.
things that we feel and experience.
Yeah. And allow ourselves to engage in.
Yeah.
Another thing, speaking of biologically, let's talk about how bisexuality fits into this picture of polyamory, because I too am
Sure.
bisexual. And so for
Mhm.
me, having been in relationships with primary relationships with both people with penises who identified as
Mhm.
men and people with vulvas and vaginas who identified with women,
Mhm.
um, recognizing that there is a visceral need for sexual intimacy or intimacy with with members of both sexes. And so I think for people who are bisexual, monogamy, just straight, I'm only going to be with this one partner at all, is actually like well, it's not including the wholeness or the totality. Well, I mean, and I can't say in every case, but I can say for
Sure.
me that was a conversation that has come up in all of my relationships with different people, or people of whatever, you know what I mean, is
Yes.
that we may be together, but I have this whole part of my humanity that I need to engage in order to be a full person. So what
Mm.
are your thoughts on that, you yourself being bisexual? And then like, does it make it
Sure.
easier to be polyamorous if you're bisexual because you kind of have an excuse, quote unquote? Or what happens if we're not allowed to be polyamorous and we are bisexual? And so does that mean we just have to let this aspect of our sexuality atrophy?
Yeah, atrophy. Yeah, and I think, the word that comes up is bi erasure, right? And so bi erasure is this idea that when someone's in a monogamous heterosexual relationship, that they appear to be straight,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so most people assume that they're straight. And oftentimes if they're in a anchor or primary relationship with a person of the same sex, then they assume that they're gay,
Mm-hmm.
right? Gay, that they're lesbian. And so bisexuality, pansexuality, right, tends to get very much erased.
Mm-hmm.
And for me personally, I did not connect with my bisexuality until I was 37. And I'm 41 now, right? And so it hasn't even been that long.
Mm-hmm.
And, once I connected with that, looking back on not all my friendships, some of my friendships were friendships, just like you're not
Mm-hmm.
attracted to every person of the opposite sex. I'm not attracted
Mm-hmm.
to every woman. But some of those friendships, there was something else there that I did not understand because I grew up Catholic. There was a lot of shame around all the sexy things,
Mm-hmm.
including this. And
Mm-hmm.
so, in my 20s, there wasn't this opportunity for me to explore.
Mm-hmm.
It was pretty repressed for me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so when I started to connect with it, I was already polyamorous.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what would have happened if I didn't choose that relationship model and there was space. With the partner I'm with, I mean, he would have been open to at least me expressing that and being in that, right? But I think there's lots of different ways to explore that. And
Mm-hmm.
so one is just this idea that you are attracted to more than your opposite sex, like
Mm-hmm.
connecting with that and acknowledging that if you're in uh, a monogamous relationship, right, you have the opportunity to just my lighting a little bit here, you have the opportunity to connect with that, right, to connect with the fact that that's a part of who you are, and then you choose if you want to act on that, right? So I think that's the first step, is to really connect with that. Does your partner know if you're in a monogamous relationship? Is this something you're keeping to yourself because you're afraid of what your partner is going to say? Your partner is going to judge you for it, or they're going to be afraid that you're going to leave them, or anything like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the first step, is to really get honest with yourself and with your partner about what's going on. And then the next step is being in conversation. What does that look like? It could look like so many things. It could look like exploring with your partner and things like threesomes, right? It can, and that could be enough, especially for someone that maybe, has been bisexual since a young age and has dated, but now is in a monogamous relationship, but just wants to have that connection with the opposite sex every now and then, right? So maybe it's
Mm-hmm.
that.
Mm-hmm.
And then there could be someone like me who didn't really connect with that for a really long time, right? I didn't connect with that for a while. And so if I would have been monogamous, I wouldn't have had that experience, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And so there's some people that, ask their partner if like they can just open up to the exploring of, that same sex relationships. Now, some people have a problem with that because let me rephrase. Some couples where it's a heterosexual couple, and the woman, the cis female, is bisexual and wants to engage, and the partner has this one. It's called a one penis policy. Like, you're not allowed to be with other men. You're only allowed to be with women. There's some people take issue with that because it just has some stuff to it, right? A charge to it for a lot of people. I also question it because I think that I think with that, it's like when we come into needs and strategies, what's the need there,
Yeah.
right? If we're not allowing our partner just to express and explore, where's the fears, like what lies in that, right? And so, if that's the case for someone, I always encourage them to just really be honest with themselves in the sense of what their needs are around that, and maybe there's a different strategy to get those needs met.
I love
And
that one
yeah.
penis policy. I think I get the needs that could be met by that. Needs for security, needs for safety,
Absolutely.
that they don't consider same sex to be cheating, or same
Yeah.
sex to be a threat. I
A
think it's all
threat.
about perceived threat, right?
Exactly. And that's some people get offended by that
Mm-hmm.
because that means that it's almost lessening or discounting the idea that a same-sex relationship can't be as fulfilling and as powerful as a heterosexual relationship, which again, that's all our conditioning,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's all our
Mm-hmm.
conditioning, because obviously there are millions of people in the world that only have same-sex relationships and are wildly and deeply fulfilled,
Yes.
right?
Yes. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
there's millions of people on this
Millions.
planet because
Yeah.
that's the way that's their soul.
That's their
Yeah,
soul. Yeah.
that's their
And
soul.
so, yeah. And so I think that again, like it's not necessarily monogamy or polyamory. It's just how do you and your partner want to navigate your needs and especially the specific need of being this whole being and experiencing
Yeah,
that. And maybe it's just the ability to talk about it,
yeah,
right? Maybe it's that. Maybe that's enough for you. And so it's really that deep dive of like, what do you need?
yes, yes.
Right? What do you need? What will make you feel good? And that might change.
Yeah, well, it is certain to change as we evolve and
Exactly.
grow.
Yeah.
What is the difference between polyamory and ethical non-monogamy? You spoke about this
Yeah.
earlier, and I wanted to tease that out for our audience because that's kind of a nuanced concept, the difference
It is.
between ethical non-monogamy and polyamory fitting under that umbrella. So could you tease that out for us a bit?
Yeah, sure. So ethical non-monogamy, I like to think of, or consensual non-monogamy, some people call it. I like to think of that as the umbrella,
Mhm.
right? That's like the umbrella for someone who's choosing to have a different relationship style other than monogamy,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And so then under that umbrella is lots of different ways to do that. So again, swinging is under that, which is when a couple engages with another couple, and oftentimes there's kind of like a swapping happening, like you're having sex together, but like you're just swapping partners, and you're kind of having sex next to each other, like around these. Sometimes there's some cross play, sometimes there's not. So that's swinging, right? Um, in a nutshell, there's more to it. And someone who's done that, but there's that. And then there's just choosing just to have sexual relationships,
Hmm.
right, with people. So you have a primary partner, or just an anchor partner, and an anchor partner usually is a term that's more used in polyamory. So you would
Mhm.
say a primary partner, you two are, the partner that you're going to be in this like deep committed relationship, and then you can go out and have sex with other people. Some people have a don't ask, don't tell policy where they don't really want to know about it, but it's like, they have some boundaries. Maybe it's use protection, make sure you're getting an STI test, make sure the person knows your situation. Maybe there's some boundaries, but other than that, you don't have to talk about it. And then there's just different layers of that. And then polyamory is, it's multiple loves, right? Love, amory, amorous.
Mhm.
And so poly, multiple. And so it's committed relationships, right? In some
Mhm.
way, right? It doesn't even have to be romantic or sexual relationships, right? So you can have platonic relationships that you are still in love with the person. My best friend, like we consider each other, she's monogamous, right? And we consider each other, I consider her my partner. We are in love with each other, just not romantically or sexually, but we have a deep love for each other. I have a deep love for her child, who I see on a regular basis, and I have a deep bond with him. Like it's beautiful, and one of the most fulfilling relationships I've ever had outside of my anchor partner. And so there's just lots of different ways to be in a relationship, and polyamory just holds this space for lots of different relating. But there's in my experience of it and opinion of it is that there's a level of commitment that's in there,
Mhm.
right? And it can be tiers as well, right? There could be partners where you're seeing them, and it kind of in a lot of ways looks kind of traditional, other than the fact that you're polyamorous. Maybe you're not going to ever live together, you're not going to be on that escalator, but you're still pretty entwined in each other's lives, right? And then there's some where maybe you have this beautiful connection with someone and you don't see them as often. You see them once a month, you see
Yeah.
them every few weeks. There's something we call a comment, where you see them, like like maybe every couple months, but every time you see them, it's beautiful. And so polyamory opens up this opportunity
Yeah.
to just experience relationships. And then there's, there's thruples, there's being in relationship, with more than one person and where everyone is engaging. That's also polyamory, but that's not the only polyamory, right? Sometimes people think that's the only thing, is like you have to be in a thruple or something like that. Not the case.
Yeah. So there's versions of polyamory where you're kind of like dating and having relationships outside of the relationship, or outside of your anchor relationship.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Sorry for that disturbance in the background. It's puppy 2:30 zoomies. Sorry, audience. There's glass breaking. There's lamp shattering.
Oh, that dog's so cute, though.
Yes, I love him so much. So that's my polyamorous relationship. It's with my dog. It's my other love. And my husband does get jealous because Binyaka gets way more snuggles than anybody else on the planet. So my husband's sometimes like, you get more love than I do.
Dog's like, what can I say? I'm adorable.
That's my my current polyamorous relationship right now is me, my husband, and my dog. And my cats are Comet.
All the cats. Cats don't have as many needs oftentimes.
Definitely not. So tell us how do you work? How do you work with couples? What is the work that you do, and how do you support couples in being able to heal their relationships and explore deepening the relationship with support?
Yeah, so I love working with couples. I really do. I think that there's just so much beauty in two people or more that want to heal, or just simply want to deepen, want to understand what's going on within themselves and within each other, to hold themselves accountable. And so the work that I do, a lot of times with couples, we work together, and sometimes I do some individual sessions as well with clients, because I love to do inner child work with couples and with clients in general. And inner child work is usually a one-on-one experience. But first of all, as you mentioned, I graduated from the Authentic Tantra program, so
like blazing stars and sparkles and shit. So yes, star student right here. Yes.
Yeah. So first of all, the Tantra is a huge part of it.
Yeah.
It's absolutely a part of it. Specifically for me, and the work that I do is the elemental meditations are something that I infuse in all of my coaching sessions at this point, because it's a medicine that, in my opinion and in my experience with myself and clients, is kind of unprecedented in the sense of behind the scenes work. It's kind of the behind the scenes, like you do it, you take the medicine, and shit starts to change and happen. Even if you like, oh, well, I don't know, I don't feel really relaxed when I'm doing these meditations, and it's really intense when I'm doing these meditations, or I feel really distracted, and it's like, just do it, it's fine.
This shit works.
It's working. It's working, right? And so, what I find in a lot of solo and couples relating and working with people is that the stuff around sex comes later. A lot of times it's not, people come in and they're like, okay, I want over my sex life, or I want to do this and I want to do that. And that's not necessarily where we wind up going. Right. And so with couples, it's boundaries, right? Talking about boundaries, it's communication, nonviolent communication, right? It's really allowing them to start to understand their needs, understand what they feel, being able to take ownership for what they feel and not project it onto their partner, right? To notice when they're projecting onto their partner, right? There's a lot of just holding the space and holding accountability for what's going on, right? I don't do a lot of like advice giving, right? It's more this like, okay, this is what I see, this is what's
Yeah.
happening. And the beauty about, I speak from doing couples therapy with my partnership and working with couples. The beauty of it is that to have someone who is not attached to your
Yeah.
shit sit back and just offer a perspective of what they're seeing, and to see and hear you individually and to help you see and hear each other is tremendously powerful and healing.
Yeah. Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Sometimes we need to be called out on our stuff,
Mm-hmm.
right? And lovingly, right?
Yes.
Not from a space of judgment or a space of shame. And I've always been, and I used to, I still do. I taught yoga for 18 years. Like I've always been very provocative in the way that I do things, and so I like to poke and push a little bit in a loving way. I like to create that safe container,
Yeah.
and then if I notice someone going into a narrative and they're just like spiraling, I'll lovingly be like, I'm gonna pause you,
Mm.
and let's like come back to you, right? And so that's really the work that I do with all my clients, but with couples is first and foremost getting them grounded and rooted into themselves individually, even within partnership, so that then they can begin to see each other clearly. Because a lot of times we're not seeing each other clearly. Like,
No, we're seeing through the lens of our wounds.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
We're seeing each other through that lens of our wounds, and that's why most likely we attracted the person we're with.
Yeah.
Because they bring that big old mirror, which you mentioned in the beginning of this, a big, beautiful mirror for us to see that. And so we can continue to just project onto them and blame them and try to, get safety from them and like all that stuff, get tangled in their stuff. Or we can start to slowly just take like a step or two back. We're keeping our hearts open, right? It's like, think of it as like we're facing each other, but we're just taking a step back, right? We're looking into ourselves. We're looking into our children. I say not my inner child, I say my inner children, because I have a whole family inside of me that needs love and support. Like, it's not just one. There is many little Brittany's that are like, love me, right?
And they have pets.
So, oh yeah, they got pets. They got, yeah. Absolutely, right? I mean, there's lots of things. And so it's like when we can do that work and be like, oh, this doesn't have anything to do with my partner.
Yes, that is so powerful.
Right? Then we can, okay, now we realize that. Then, okay, let's come back together. And now let's come and talk about this from that lens of understanding that this actually isn't really about them, which allows me to see them and hold space for all that they are, because I can finally understand and start to hold space for all that I am.
Yeah. Wow. And this is the work that is essential, and when we do it is literally healing the world. Like, really, that's not an exaggeration. Like, if we can't be in right relationship, in our most intimate relationships, how are we going to be in right relationship in the world and with the world? So it's doing like, and then I know experiencing this with my own partner, early on, like seeing the different attachment styles, and I was like, oh, I'm the avoidant and he's the anxious. But when I had the understanding of the language, I could see his anxious stuff come up, and I could just be like, oh, that's anxious. And so I could speak to the wound. And so instead of like withdrawing from it and being like, fuck you need a connection, I could be like, oh, he's feeling insecure now and he has a need for reassurance. So I could just say, give him that reassurance. And then I could go meet my own need for self-connection or whatever I needed to do. But it's so salient and so necessary and critical, I would say, this work that we do to dig in, like you're describing, and be able to reclaim ownership. And ultimately it's reclaiming our power, because when we're in wound, we're not in our power.
No. Well, we're giving our power away. We're giving our power away to that person, to our partner.
And to the wound itself.
And to the wound itself. And I just want to speak to something that you said, that like when you realized attachment styles and you were able to use them, and you have been doing work on yourself for years. I know this, right? And so, and that's an important thing to recognize, right? Because sometimes we think you were able to do that. I was able to do that because we've done a lot of work, right? We've put the effort in. Because there's some, it's like, okay, I know about attachment styles. I understand it. Okay, great. And then the person, you meet your opposite, and you're like, but I know attachment styles. I know what they're doing, but I can't take it.
You're overwhelmed by it. Yeah, because you haven't processed it out yet. Yeah, because
you know, I mean, it's still for me. Like I said, I'm at that earned security, and still because I'm anxious. Yeah. I can be anxious, and I'm not. I have an anxious attachment style. There's a difference, and like sometimes it still comes up, and I can voice it, and I can speak to it. And are there times when I still try to resource safety from my partner? Are there times when I still need some co-regulation? Yes, and that's okay, right? But the difference is now that in the past I used to manipulate my way into getting that.
Exactly. Right? Yes.
Not because I'm a shitty person or because I'm even a particularly manipulative person, because I did not know I was doing it.
Yeah.
We all have our manipulative moments. I mean, like, look at a child. Like, the child are amazing at manipulating to get their needs met. They're like, I'm going to do this because this has worked before, right? And so it's. I think the word manipulation sometimes is like a scary word, a charged word, because it means that we're bad.
Yeah.
And it doesn't. It means we're human.
Yeah.
And when we have a need, especially when it's attached to a trauma, we will do whatever is necessary to get that need met, because a lot of times it's not us that's driving the bus, the ship, you know, whatever. It's our wound, our child is like, whoa, I'm feeling super unsafe and I need support right now.
Yeah.
Right. And so if we're not connected to that, then a lot of times we're going to use our relationships to try to get those needs met. And it can oftentimes be at the expense of our partners, which has been my experience.
Yeah.
I've literally done that.
So doing our homework. So tell us, Brittany, how do we get a hold of you so we can do our homework?
Yeah. Well, social media wise, the best place to find me is on Instagram at sexually_liberated. That's like my biggest community, and I post actively, really private stuff about myself and my life with really sexy pictures. And then
a great new haircut. And she's got a great new haircut. It's very hot.
and then things about sexual education and relationships, lots of quotes and things like that. And then I'm also on Twitter. It's Sex Liberated. And then my website is BrittanyPolicastro.com. And so you can find out all the things that I do, courses that I have, and my coaching, and all the things are on there, as well as a blog that I've been writing for 5 years.
Beautiful. And you've got a course coming up in the beginning of next month.
Yes,
we don't have time to dig into it today, unfortunately. So, but it is going to be, is it a course for people with vulvas and vaginas?
No, it is actually a couples course. So it's, so it's relationships. It's called Integrated Love. It's a 5-week virtual, but like live coursed workshop course for anyone who's in relationship. It's not just monogamous, but everyone, sexual identities, all the things. And yeah, it's to a lot of the stuff that we were just talking about. We're going to go through each week, and I'm going to give you education and all kinds of stuff, support practices, tantra practices. Yeah, I'm really excited about it.
Awesome. All right. So BrittanyPolicastro.com. And then we will also have that link under this on YouTube and our blog at authentictantra.com so that you guys can look it up and reach out and sign up and connect. Thank you so much, Brittany. It has been awesome talking with you. I would love to talk with you again. Yes. I mean, on air, we'll talk. We'll talk in real life, but also on air. Thank you so much, audience, for tuning in and joining us this evening. I hope it has filled your heart and soul as much as it has filled mine. Make sure you go to BrittanyPolicastro.com and find out about that couples course that is coming up at the end or the beginning of next month, end of this month, beginning of next month. Have a beautiful night. We will see you next Thursday. Love you. Bye. You've been listening to Sex is Medicine with Devi Ward Erickson, your #1 resource for holistic sex education. You can listen to and subscribe to Sex is Medicine on Spotify, Stitcher, TuneIn, iTunes, iHeartRadio, and YouTube. Just search Sex is Medicine with Devi Ward. Stay connected with me and my guests on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Authentic Tantra, and learn how you can use Tantra as medicine to heal, awaken, and empower every area of your life at AuthenticTantra.com. Make sure to tune in to Sex is Medicine every Thursday at 7 p.m. Pacific on Contact Talk Radio Network, and join our watch party every Thursday evening on Facebook at Authentic Tantra. We look forward to you joining us next week for another episode of Sex is Medicine with Devi Ward.